Sarah had always been admired, and at times feared, for her fearless honesty. In every room she entered, her presence was felt, not because she demanded attention, but because she spoke with a rare conviction. Friends relied on her to say what others wouldn't dare. Colleagues valued her sharp tongue in meetings, where she cut through pretenses like a blade through silk. To Sarah, silence was complicity, and she believed truth, no matter how harsh, was always better than a lie. She carried herself with confidence, not arrogance. Her words weren't reckless, they were deliberate, chosen for their impact. That strength had earned her respect in a world where many still expected women to stay quiet. But beneath her composed exterior lived a complex heart, a woman shaped by loss, betrayal, and the constant pressure to be the strong one. Speaking up had become her shield. Yet life has a way of humbling even the boldest spirits. Sarah was about to find herself in a situation unlike any before, one that would not only test her principles, but challenge the very foundation of her identity. What happens when the truth you speak causes more harm than good? Sarah was about to find out. The air was thick with unspoken tension as relatives slowly filled the living room, clutching teacups and forcing polite smiles. It was supposed to be a warm family gathering, Sarah's mother's birthday, but underneath the surface, old wounds simmered. The seating arrangement alone spoke volumes, cousins avoiding eye contact, siblings positioned at opposite ends of the room, and Sarah herself perched near the fireplace, watching it all with a quiet intensity. Years of unresolved misunderstandings hung between them like heavy drapes. A disputed will, a forgotten favor, and a few too many whispered criticisms at past dinners had frayed their bonds. The laughter was brittle, the compliments forced. Every light-hearted comment seemed to echo with a double meaning, and no one dared bring up the elephant in the room. Sarah noticed the glances, sideways looks, tightened jaws, subtle silences when certain names were mentioned. She had been silent so far, resisting the urge to address the tension aloud. But with every passing moment, the weight of it pulled harder on her chest. As the cake was brought out and everyone gathered to sing, Sarah's eyes flicked to her younger brother. His smile fake, his eyes hollow. The moment was close. She felt it rising. The conversation had drifted, as it often did, to memories of their childhood. Games in the backyard, summer trips, and old family traditions. Laughter flickered more genuinely now, softening the room's edges. But then Aunt Miriam, ever nostalgic and a little too nosy, turned to Sarah's brother, Daniel, and asked innocently, "So, when are you finally going to tell everyone the real reason you left your last job?" The room froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for everyone to realize they'd stumbled into dangerous territory. Daniel chuckled nervously, brushing it off. "Oh, office politics, nothing worth talking about." Sarah looked at him. Her instincts kicked in. She knew this dance too well. The lies, the half-truths, the protecting of reputations. She glanced at their parents, who exchanged knowing looks but said nothing. Everyone was pretending again. And then it happened. "Or was it because you got caught leaking company data to a competitor?" Sarah said, her voice calm but cutting. A gasp. A teacup clinked against a saucer. Daniel's face drained of color. The silence was louder than any scream. She hadn't meant to say it, not like that. But the words were out now, and there was no turning back. Daniel stared at her, his mouth slightly open, stunned. The room had fallen into a heavy, stunned silence, eyes darting between the siblings, no one daring to speak. Sarah could feel the pounding of her heart in her ears, but she didn't stop. Something had cracked inside her, a floodgate flung open after years of silence and restraint. "You sit there like nothing happened," she said, her voice rising. "Pretending you're the victim of office politics when we all know you almost cost Dad his reputation with your mess." "Sarah, that's enough," their mother said sharply, but Sarah couldn't hold it in any longer. "No, it's not enough. I covered for him. I kept my mouth shut when he begged me to talk to Dad, to fix everything. And now you act like you've done nothing wrong? Like the truth just doesn't matter?" Daniel stood up, his face twisted in shame and anger. "You said you'd never bring that up." "Well, I lied," Sarah snapped, "just like you did, to all of us." The words hung in the air, bitter and irreversible. She looked around the room, her father's clenched jaw, her mother's teary eyes, cousins whispering behind hands. In that moment, Sarah realized this wasn't truth. This was damage. The silence was deafening. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the room itself had stopped breathing. Sarah's words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Her father's eyes had narrowed, not with confusion, but with pain. Her mother, lips trembling, looked away, blinking back tears. A cousin coughed quietly, as if trying to break the tension, but it only made the stillness more unbearable. Daniel stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with betrayal. "You really did it," he said quietly, barely more than a whisper. "You finally did it." "Daniel," Sarah began, but he shook his head. "I trusted you," he said, his voice breaking. "You were the only one who knew everything, and you turned on me. Like I meant nothing." He walked out without another word, the door slamming hard behind him. Everyone turned slowly to look at Sarah. She felt their stares, some filled with shock, others with quiet judgment. No one came to her defense. No one said a word. In a single moment, a truth had been spoken, and a bond had been broken beyond repair. As the door slammed behind Daniel, Sarah's mind reeled, and suddenly, the present blurred into memories she couldn't escape. Flashback 1. The night he confessed. She remembered the night Daniel showed up at her apartment, soaked in rain, eyes red and swollen. "I messed up," he had whispered, breaking down as he confessed what he had done at work. He had begged her not to tell anyone, not even their parents. "Just help me fix it, please," he'd pleaded. And she had. She pulled strings, called in favors, and lied to their father to shield him. Flashback 2. Their father's disappointment. A week later, their father had stormed into her kitchen, frustrated and suspicious. "He's hiding something," he'd said, pacing. "You know it, don't you?" Sarah had stood frozen, every instinct pushing her to speak the truth, but she didn't. "He's just overwhelmed," she had lied, swallowing the guilt. Flashback 3. Childhood memory. Long before the betrayal, they were just kids, Sarah covering for Daniel after he'd broken their neighbor's window. "You always save me," he'd said, hugging her tightly. "You're the only one I trust." Back in the present, Sarah stood in the middle of the room, her heart aching. What she had said wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was the unraveling of years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of love that once bound them tightly. In the days that followed, the silence stretched far beyond the walls of that living room. Calls from family stopped coming. Messages that once buzzed her phone with warmth and humor were replaced with empty notifications and quiet judgment. Even the family group chat, once chaotic with daily updates, went eerily still after someone quietly removed her. Her mother didn't return her calls. When she finally answered, her voice was cold, distant. "You didn't just hurt Daniel," she said. "You humiliated all of us." At work, the change was subtle, but unmistakable. Colleagues who once admired her candor now avoided eye contact. Meetings were shorter, conversations clipped. One coworker she'd mentored for years suddenly asked to switch teams. Sarah could feel it in the way people responded. Respect had shifted into caution. She attended a family event a week later, hoping to repair the damage, but the atmosphere turned frigid the moment she arrived. Whispers followed her through the room. Daniel wasn't there. The truth she'd spoken hadn't freed anyone. It had only cast her out. Sarah began to realize that sometimes people don't remember why you spoke the truth. They only remember that you caused the storm. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that settles after a storm, heavy and hollow. Sarah sat alone at the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the phone in her hand. No new messages, no missed calls, just the same photo of her and Daniel from 3 years ago. arms slung around each other, smiling like nothing could ever break them. She had replayed that moment at the party 100 times, the exact pitch of her voice, the way his eyes had widened, the weight of the room collapsing around her. At the time, it had felt justified, necessary even, but now all she could hear was the echo of her own cruelty. Why couldn't I have waited? Why did I say it then? She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling the coldness of isolation creeping in. Regret clung to her like a second skin. She had always believed in truth, believed it could heal, empower, correct. But she hadn't spoken to heal. She'd spoken to wound, and it worked. Now, every memory of Daniel came with a sting. His laugh, his late-night calls, his trust. And she had shattered it, for what? A moment of brutal honesty and a lifetime of regret. The first attempt to reach out was through a text to Daniel. She typed and deleted a dozen apologies before finally sending a simple message. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we talk? Her fingers hovered over the screen for a long moment, but no reply came. Not even a read receipt. She didn't give up, though. She called, again and again, each voicemail more desperate than the last. Her heart pounded with every unanswered ring. A few days later, she stood on the doorstep of her parents' house, hoping for even a sliver of forgiveness. Her mother answered, her face drawn and tired. Sarah took a step forward, her voice trembling. Mom, please. I didn't mean it. I was just frustrated. I didn't think it would go that far. Her mother's eyes were a mix of sorrow and anger. It's not just about what you said, Sarah. It's about what you destroyed. You don't get to undo that by saying you're sorry. But I was trying to protect him, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. I thought if I told the truth, it would fix everything. Her mother shook her head, stepping back, not offering even a fraction of comfort. You can't fix everything with the truth, sweetheart. Sometimes, silence is the better option. The words hit her like a slap. She stood there, frozen, as her mother closed the door gently in her face. She tried again the next day, this time reaching out to Daniel's closest friend, someone who had always been there for both of them. Please help me. Tell him I'm sorry. But the response was cold. I don't know if you can fix this, Sarah. You crossed a line that might be too hard to come back from. The weight of it all settled in. Some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. Not with words, not with apologies. The damage had already been done. Weeks passed, and the emptiness lingered. Sarah had stopped trying to fix things. The futile attempts at reconciliation had only deepened the chasm. She had given space to the silence, finally accepting the weight of her actions. Her relationship with Daniel remained severed, and while her family didn't shun her entirely, their conversations were always strained, a reminder of the trust she had shattered. At work, she no longer felt the same authority or respect. She had once been the voice people trusted, but now she was the woman who spoke too freely, too harshly. One evening, Sarah stood in front of her bedroom mirror, the quiet hum of her apartment echoing around her. She thought of her mother's words. Silence is sometimes the better option. She never thought she would agree with them, but now the truth stung in a way she hadn't expected. There were moments when silence wasn't a weakness. It was a choice to protect, to consider, to hold back. She had learned that the hard way. It didn't matter whether Daniel or anyone else ever forgave her. The lesson had already been carved into her heart. Once words were out, they couldn't be retracted. And sometimes, even the most honest truth could cause irreversible harm. Sarah took a deep breath and made a quiet promise to herself. She would learn to speak less impulsively, to pause before reacting, and to consider the weight her words could carry. Whether or not she would ever be forgiven, she had changed, and that at least was a step toward healing.